Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
You're watching.
We're watching. You're watching Fanboy.
Fanboy. Fanboy.
Fanboy.
Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
Dot. I assume Tom.
Yeah. This man reached out to his fan base asking what we should talk about today in our interview, which I have to thank him for trying to make my job easier. But one of the things we are definitely going to touch about is his hair regimen, because you can't have that good of a hair and not go through like a 20-minute shower process. Peter Jang, how are you today?
Doing well. How you doing?
I'm great, man. Listen, I just saw your short film. I believe it was called Mark IV.
Mask.
I'm sorry. You know, I read it wrong. But no, it's a film about shell shock. I prefer the term shell shock to PTSD because I think using the initialism kind of diminishes what the character goes through.
Okay.
And what people that have suffered through it goes through. Because in World War I, they called it shell shock, and you knew that they had suffered some psychological and physical trauma during the war. And I think just using an initial kind of, you know, desensitizes people to what actual suffering is.
Oh, well, I can see where it comes, like where you could think that for sure.
Yeah, but it's a powerful short. The one thing that drives me crazy about shorts is that if it's really good, I want much more of it. And if it's really bad, 8 minutes feels like 8 hours. And so with this, I really want a full-length feature of it.
Yeah. Well, you know, I did just make that short film as a standalone piece. I have had some people ask me about making a feature length, which I definitely feel like it wouldn't be difficult to do. I mean, you know, it's an automatically sympathetic character because, you know, it's about a veteran who is experiencing PTSD or shell shock and suicidal thoughts, and he tries to use, like many veterans do, go to a gym, try to work it out. But at the same time, you know, he's on hold with the VA because they're backed up, and then also he's avoiding calls from his wife because he's too ashamed to talk to her. And the reason why I called it Mask was actually because it was something that a friend of mine who experiences PTSD and had suicidal thoughts, you know, when I was researching for the film, you know, he basically said, you know, none of my friends, none of my family know that it's happening. Whenever I'm out, I'm wearing a mask, and when I go home, mask comes off, and then I'm sitting in my own sorrow and you know, hugging my gun. So, you know, it's one of those deals that I wanted to show that even the strongest of us need help sometimes, and there's a culture in America that you're not supposed to try to get help. And I wanted to make a piece that allowed the audience to experience that kind of despair for themselves, but also experience the hope at the end with him finally, you know, choosing, you know, not to do it and to be with his family.
Well, you won Best Narrative at, was it, let me double check with this one, Marina Del Rey Film Festival. So congratulations with that for this, because it is a powerful story. You know, one thing I noticed in talking to older veterans versus younger veterans is that whether it was World War II or Korea, they had that, you know, what was it, 2-month boat ride home to where it was group therapy without it necessarily, well, before it was even called group therapy, that they would be able to have these conversations and discussions with each other. Whereas now, you know, you're flown home, and then 18 to 24 hours later, you're back in your bed after having been in a war zone. So there is no time to go through all of this and readapt to a civilian lifestyle.
Sure, yeah, I mean, but at the same time, you know, that this culture that I talked about in the previous question was, you know, started back then, where it's kind of like mental health was not an important aspect of health in general. They thought that, oh, your mind is just your mind, like you should figure it out. As long as your physical body is okay, then, you know, you eat and whatever. And you know, it's kind of an interesting idea. You know, there's a semi-funny quote that I had heard one time. It's like, you know, people always talk about how in the past there weren't a lot of diseases. And it's like, what? but then in the past there was also a lot of unexplained deaths. You know, so with one of these things, you know, the shell shock times, it, yes, you know, they had that time, you know, maybe it helped a few people, but at the same time, it also started that idea that you made it through, go home and be with your family, because that's and be with your family, be with your God, and that's all that you need. And you should, as a man, because usually it was military men, especially in those days, it was just you have to you have to now be a man and figure it out, you know, because you need to have a family, and you need, and then that's why a lot of people, they drank a lot, and that's what, you know, is very difficult to, you know, in my movie, I kind of put at the end, there have actually been 4 times as many veterans who have committed suicide that have died in combat, and that that goes all the way back to, you know, World War II times, when people were seeing some horrific things, experiencing horrific things, doing horrific things, and then they come back and there was no concept of mental health. There's just, you're alive, make it work. And it's created a very large, it created a culture that not just stayed in the military, but also just went to people in general, where, you know, your mental health is yours to deal with, and then your physical health is the only thing that we actually have treatments for. But, you know, luckily in the recent decades, it has changed a little bit, where we are now starting to figure that out. And even though you know, there's a lot of work to be done with veterans in our system here, there have been big strides in making it better. And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, something like the internet, where now it's really hard to hide these things anymore. You know, it used to be you didn't know about it unless you really looked for it, but now, you know, it's not just with veterans, but also, you know, just with celebrities, with, you're seeing people, you know, kill themselves. And I had a friend of mine that did recently, and you know, it brings it to the forefront, and we really are starting to see that mental health is just as important as physical health, sometimes even more, because it can lead to physical problems.
My condolences on the loss of your friend.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, as a condolences to very many people. You know, Jason David Frank, he was the Green Ranger from Power Rangers. You know, he was widely influential to a lot of people around the entire world. I mean, he was the gem, and you know, when that happened, it really, you know, especially since I had made this piece years ago, and this is something that is permeated through my writing since then, and will continue to lose him in that way really hit very hard for me, and along with a lot of other people. It was so sudden.
Yeah, I got to meet him a couple of years ago before the world shut down at Comic-Con in San Diego, and you know, he was great to everybody. So I don't have one bad thing to say about him. It's just sad that it ended up the way it did.
Right. No, definitely. I mean, I owe a lot to him as just personally, as far as my career goes. You know, uh, some of the stuff that I did with Bat and the Sun, you know, the fan videos of, you know, Green Ranger versus Ryu, and Scorpion versus, you know, the White Ranger, and then the Power Rangers Legacy Wars. I mean, you know, he really, once he got connected with us with those projects, you know, it really gave it a whole new life, because, you know, obviously he is who he is. You know, when you have a legendary person touching things, and it becomes something special.
It almost transcends the notion of the character into the person being the character.
Right. Mm-hmm.
With Mask, you know, this was a powerful short, and I understand making it as a standalone, where several of us wanted it. You could see it becoming a full-length feature. What has been the general reaction from the military community that has seen this, you know, with veterans and their families?
Well, you know, I've been working as an actor and largely a stuntman for the last decade, you know, and I have a lot of friends who are veterans, and also family. My mother was a veteran. She suffered from PTSD growing up. I never understood it until recently, not recently, but when I got into an adult, what she was going through. But then same thing with, you know, a lot of the stunt people are veterans, and a lot of people, and, you know, just in general, are veterans. And, you know, when they've come to the screenings, because it hasn't been released yet, but when they come to the screenings, you know, I've had people cry, people talk about how, you know, it reminded them of, you know, a friend that was dealing with something similar. And, you know, I think that a lot of people appreciated that I wasn't trying to kind of ham it up with a lot of like action sequences and all this kind of stuff, because that side of it is done when people are dealing with this stuff a lot of the time. So they come home and they're not in the action anymore. So, but then like in movies, a lot of times they really rely on showing that the whole time, and I tried to take a softer approach to it to really allow the audience to live in those moments with the character. And I think that people appreciated it, and I've had a lot of people who have told me that when they watched it they cried or just were very moved by what they saw.
Yeah. When I saw the first third of the film, I thought he had lost his wife and his daughter, because we'd hear her leaving the messages, and in my mind he was replaying the messages that she had left him and either was murdered in a home invasion or a car accident. And then we see the evolution of what happens to him, and it's him who's suffering from his situation with PTSD rather than the loss of his family. He's losing himself. And I thought that was a very powerful part of the story, because it wasn't foreshadowing for the loss of his family.
Right. Well, I really wanted to encompass, I wanted to capture where it's coming from all sides. He has his memories that are causing him pain, but then he also has his own shame, warranted or not, that he feels that is keeping him from the thing that is ultimately saves him, which is his family, right? So, we have him on hold with the VA, which is ultimately frustrating. Anybody's been on hold for anything, but especially for something like this. And then you have some minor flashbacks that you see where you kind of know where he's talking about. You have the voices in his head where he's hearing himself say, "I'm sorry for your loss," to, his friends, family members, when he's at their funeral. But then also he has the present, where the pressure of his family coming in, like, "Hey, we need you home. We need you to do this." It's like all this kind of stuff. And the shame of him not wanting to affect his family and his newborn child. I wanted to have all those pressures floating around him at the same time, because that's really how a lot of people are feeling, when they come home.
You having been a junior Taekwondo champion, Olympic judo. I'm sorry, junior Olympian for Taekwondo. Yeah, we have so many different martial arts, though, that we're going to get tongue-tied between all of them. There is that pressure to perform from a very young age to get there, and to tone down your emotions and be a bit more stoic rather than dealing with those problems. How have you transitioned into being able to face your own situations when for so long it was bottling it up as a martial arts practitioner?
Well, I think that's a little bit of a mischaracterization, just because, and it's a general idea that, with martial arts, it's bottling it up or cutting it off. But I think, at least with the martial arts teachers that I had, and I think that, any martial arts teacher worth his or her salt would teach this to their students, is that it's not about bottling up your emotions. It's about harnessing them and controlling them, right? And that's actually why I am so interested in filmmaking and acting specifically too. I like to do a lot of different things in the film industry, but acting specifically, the reason why I love it is because I see it as the last leg of my martial arts training, right? Because when you're practicing martial arts, you learn the mental discipline, you learn the physical discipline, you learn like the techniques and everything like that, and controlling all of those aspects of yourself. But one thing that it and nothing else can really teach you is emotional control. And that's what I love about acting, was being able to push it to the limit, get there, and then bring yourself back, right? And that's what martial arts is all about: pushing yourself to a limit and then bringing it back, and then making yourself completely balanced, body, mind, and spirit, right? And and that's what what really drew me to acting in the first place, was just the idea that now that I feel like I've reached a certain amount of control of my body and a certain amount of control of my mind, I want to be able to use those ideas and then get control of my emotions as well.
Yeah, that's a whole different world from crunching numbers with the BA in economics.
Yeah, yeah. You know, but at the same time, the way I also look at it is, you know, when you're doing freelance art, which is basically every actor and stunt person and director and the writer or whatever, you know, unless you're on a contract, but even then, I mean, it's still relatively freelance. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, right? So I was an economics major, and that's one of the reasons why I really saw this as a career path. Was that I saw, okay, well, you know, there are a lot of people who um, can learn these things and then use business principles in their art, like to in order to promote themselves. You know, I'm the owner of my own company, and I am also the product. So as long as I look at that in that way, it makes it very easy. I mean, every movie, you know, is basically a new company starting up, and the director is the CEO, the producers are the board of directors, and then you have, you know, your marketing people and all these different things. I mean, they're, you know, they're just different names, but it's still the same business concepts because it's show business. It's not, you know, show hobby.
Do you find it more difficult to be the performer or the director or even the writer of the projects?
You know, they all have their own challenges, right? So, you know, as the actor, it's challenging because it's a catharsis, you know, for sure, of being able to bring these emotions up. But then, you know, also, like I said, you know, bringing it back is very difficult. You know, it's like um, I like to think it's, you know, very similar to stunt work, right? Where, you know, it's not enough to just be able to hurt yourself for on camera, you know, because you won't be able to do the stunt again. Same thing, you can't hurt yourself emotionally in a take and then be able to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And that, I think that's the pitfall that a lot of actors have, right? And later on, they become very depressed. And you know, luckily, you know, like I said, you know, mental health is becoming uh, more at the forefront of things. But you know, a lot of times when you are really doing the work of an actor to push yourself into these different directions, you know, it's hard to bring your mind back. You know, and you really have to take your time to really care for yourself. But then when it comes to stunts, obviously there's a window of danger of in everything that you do, and as long as you stay within that window, that's the challenge. It's the problem solving of figuring out how do we take this dangerous thing and do it safely and do it 20 times safely. And then, but you know, as the writer and as the director, I mean, coming up with these ideas, you know, the way that I work with those, you know, at least it's very exciting for me. It's I don't know if it obviously is difficult to do, but it's so exciting that I don't think about the work. I just do it, you know, without thinking about it. But at the same time, you know, it is a challenge because you really have to figure out how am I going to fill up this frame so that it has an emotional impact and a lasting impact on the audience. And you know, I think that every one of those has its own set of challenges, but they're all so exciting to me that I don't ever have to think about them being work.
And then how do you find your center and refocus yourself with the emotional taxing of performing sometimes, especially in a very dramatic scene?
Yeah, you know, I definitely felt that with this most recent short film, Mask. You know, because I was both the director and the star. So having to wear the two different hats, it can be difficult to do. I mean, you know, like getting to an emotional place and then like, you know, cut, center myself. All right, let me see the shot. Let me see what we did. You know, it can be very difficult to do, and that's why they always tell you, you know, don't act and direct in your own project. You know, that's a general idea, right? But which I obviously don't listen to. But you know, it's just to recenter myself. I think that luckily with martial arts growing up, you know, to get my black belt actually in the school that I was in, we actually had to meditate for 12 hours straight. And that experience really, I think, helped me find that center for myself. And once you experience it, then it's not easy, but easier to find your way back, right? So, you know, when I did the 12-hour stint, you know, I was like, I think I was 16, maybe no, I was like 14 or something like that. But you know, my first 4 hours, my mind's going. But then eventually, after 4 hours, then I run out of things to think about. You know, so it kind of forced me that after the, you know, maybe like the eighth hour, I didn't have anything to think about anymore. So now I was just in this place where it's just completely blank, and then I found my center there.
How do you keep yourself from falling to sleep at that point?
Well, maybe you do. You know, that's the thing. And I think that there's a, you know, a misconception from a lot of people that don't meditate a lot. I don't know if you do or not, but I get this from a lot of people, like say like my girlfriend or some family members. There's like I can't meditate, I can't meditate. It's like, well, just you can. The way really what you have to do is like if you fall asleep, great. It's like there's nothing wrong with that. And if your mind's thinking about things, that's part of the reason why you meditate, so you can work through these ideas. The idea is to empty out your mind, but at the same time, it's not a steadfast thing. It's like allow your mind to do what it does, because when you're cutting off your vision and you're trying not to like pay attention to the stuff that you hear, and then all of a sudden your thoughts are going, then they start resolving themselves. And I think that's something that is just very healthy and very good for people to do if they can.
Is it more freeing when you have total control of the project? Yes, there's more relying on you and all the weight is on your shoulders, but not answering to another producer or director, and staying true to your own vision as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I actually do love that aspect of it, because you never know what somebody else will be able to bring. And I'm not opposed to working with other people. What it is just, since I have lower budgets, it's just like if I want to be able to pay people what they're worth. I'm a professional myself, and I would like to at least get my rate, and I know that people are the same way, and it has nothing to do with them not wanting to, give the effort because it's free or something like that. It's just one of these things that, when you're doing something that's free versus even if you're only paying a small amount, there's a certain amount of buy-in that comes in there, right? So I know for myself that I'll be able to get 100% of what I need from myself. So, and I want to, and when I bring people in, which I do bring a lot of people in, I've worked with a lot of people on my films, I it's always a chance. You always a chance that like maybe they're not going to do the work, maybe they're not going to prepare or whatever. But at the same time, the reason why I brought them in is because I know that they will be able to do that. And then when it comes to having like a lead actor or a director, you're not always going to be able to make sure, unless you're able to provide them the environment where they can focus only on this and not have to worry about other projects. Especially if it's a free thing. Yeah, they have to worry about paying their bills. I mean, everybody does. They have to worry about where the next job's coming from. And if my job is taking up some of the time of them doing that, then obviously I'm not providing the circumstance where they can let go of their distractions and really focus on what I want to do, but what I'm trying to do with my film. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, it works, man. Because one thing I truly appreciate about independent films and micro budget films is that it forces you to be more creative. It's not the whole we'll fix it in post or we'll throw some more money at it and do 6 more reshoots.
Mm. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it was one of those things that it's just you have to plan, like over plan, especially if you're going to be both the director and the writer and the actor. You have to over plan. I have my shot list. I have very specific instructions that I have for my DP, but I also have a lot of trust in the people that I use as director of photographies, because they know exactly what I'm looking for. They have my shot list that they can follow, but then I also trust them because I know their work and I trust their visions of things, that they're going to capture me in the way that I want them to as well. Oh, and also maybe give me a surprise and maybe capture something that I didn't see in the planning of it.
What's something you learned about yourself as a performer transitioning from stunts to leading man?
Oh, well, they're vastly different jobs. A lot of times people kind of believe that they're one and the same because you're both on camera and you're both portraying a character, right? But the thought process is much different, and you have, even when you're doing an acting or stunt acting role, it is still much different because in the stunt portion of it, you have to worry about the safety of the other person. But as the actor, your character wants that person dead or severely injured or whatever. Let's say it's a fight scene. So those two mindsets don't intersect. So a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I can just do my own stunts or whatever. It's like, well, okay, maybe, but are you an actor or are you a stunt person? Like, and if you're both, then are you able to take off the stunt person hat and put the actor hat on, right? Because with acting, you have to have a certain amount of letting go of what you're of the moment, living in that moment, living off of the other person and interaction with you. Versus with stunts, it has to be completely choreographed and down to a T. Otherwise, somebody could get injured, right? So being able to, you know, it is fun though to be able to take off that stunt hat and put on the actor hat and really let go a little bit and let myself become this person versus with stunts I have to really keep my head on a swivel and make sure it's like, okay, well, something goes wrong here, then I need to make sure that this guy doesn't hit his head. I need to make sure that this a piece of equipment doesn't get hurt. I need to make sure that I don't get hurt on this little portion right there, which is a completely different mindset.
The challenges that a lot of actors face in that regard is being one dimensional, not as a performer, but their primary focus has only been acting, or their primary focus has only been directing, or it's only been comedy, or it's only been drama. And you refer to yourself as an entrepreneur, and that's where the economics degree helps quite a bit. Has that been made it easier for you to be a part of this performing world, in that you can wear multiple hats and are trying different avenues?
Yes and no. There's still a little bit of a I want to say binary, but like an idea in the industry where you really kind of can't do all these things. You have to just pick one. Which specialty is one of the highest facets of capitalism, right? It's like you have your special section of the whole machine, and just focus on this section. And if you're doing too many things, then people believe that you're taking away from all the other stuff, right? But I found that for me though, having my economics training and also just my business mindset, it's made it so that it's easier for me to collaborate with others. When I get to a set, depending on what my job is for that set, because if I'm there as a stunt person, I'm not trying to be the director, I'm not trying to be the writer. I have to talk to them about what their vision is, right? Or if I'm the actor and I'm not doing stunts that day, then I need to make sure that the stunt people and also the director and all these people know what, like get what they need out of me too. So I think that definitely the business side of things has helped me with collaboration and delegation much more. And also, keeping an idea of selling and marketing myself in the correct way. I feel that people do appreciate it though, that because if I say I'm just there as an actor, not as anything else, just an actor, then I can also speak the language of the other people in the room, including the lighting guy, including the gaffer, including all the different crew members, to make sure that they're getting what they need to do their best work, so that I can do my best work, and then as a collaboration, we make the best product possible.
And does that, well, obviously it makes it easier for you in interacting with everybody else. Does it also help production move along more smoothly because they know that you can be multifaceted?
I think it does. I don't know if they know it or not. What they will know is that this shot just worked. Because that's a lot of times that's kind of what there are people on set that will be able to pick out, like, okay, well, everything on this take worked except for, and they'll be able to pick it out. But at the same time, sometimes it's just like, wow, everything worked. All right, moving on. And that's always a good feeling. And the whole idea is like no notes are good notes, right? Because when you're there, especially when you're on a film set or for a movie or a TV show, like really yes, it's art, and but they're also on a schedule, because every day is more and more money, right? You're bleeding money constantly on movies and TV shows, right? So if you're taking a long time doing something, then it's costing production a lot of money. So if I come in and then I do my job and everything just kind of like worked on set, I'm not going to get a pat on the back. Like, I mean, like maybe depending on what the job is, but like, they're not going to be like, hey, you're the source of everything. What they'll be is like, wow, okay, that was a great take. Moving on. And then I know that my part was part of that. And I know that what I brought to it was that I made it so that the lighting guy didn't have to worry about the shadows on my face. The camera guy got the good side of my face that he wanted, and the other actor in the scene or the other stunt person scene didn't get hurt, or they got what they needed emotionally from me being able to do the scene with them. So I don't think it's a very direct, like, hey, all these things, so therefore it's good. It's more of a passive, like, wow, everything worked, all right, moving on. And that's good enough for me, because I really, what am I there for? I'm there to do a specific job, and if I can make everybody else's job easier, I don't need them to give me a pat on the back. I just want to know that I did it.
As things progress professionally, cameras get cheaper. We all have 4K and 8K cameras in our pockets at this point, thanks to technology. Does it make it easier to be an independent filmmaker these days than the way it was, say, 10 years ago, and definitely more so than 20 years ago?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, it's amazing how much, excuse me, it's amazing how much easier it is now, with your camera in your pocket. I mean, there are a lot of people, talk about that, and, like big directors, like, basically, because you have a camera in your pocket, it's good to just allow the creative juices flow. And then if it is a passion of yours, just make stuff. I mean, you don't have to show anybody, but you can make it. And that's great practice, And I feel like, I still feel like it's like a lot of people like don't call it a hobby, but for me, it is a hobby. It's my favorite hobby. I happen to get paid for it, but it's my favorite thing to do. I do it in my off time. And yeah, part of that came from just being able to pull out my phone and just, capture something that I thought was really cool looking or beautiful or ugly or or disturbing, and then portray it in a way, string it together in a certain way that an audience will watch it and then have the same reaction that I had.
Similar to that scene in American Beauty where he's just following the bag blow in the wind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it had meaning to him, to maybe to you and me, it was just a bag floating in the wind, but you never know how something is going to feel to somebody else, and maybe just showing the images isn't enough, but like having some other things around it, like, some actor saying something or a voiceover, like, it can really have a profound meaning to people.
What's something we would be a little shocked or perplexed to go, that's an interest of his? Something unique that we wouldn't expect to be a part of who Peter is?
Well, it's kind of interesting, because being in stunts for so long, it's actually a lot of times people are just surprised when stunt people have any kind of intellectual pursuits at all. Because I don't know what happened in America one day, but at some point. But the idea was that you're smart or you're an athlete, and there's no in between. And luckily, lately we've been able to see that idea challenged, and people are realizing that athletes are smart too, and also smart people are athletic, and there is a balance between body and mind, but I guess for me, a lot of people don't really feel that I have, like, just because of the nature of the action work that I've done, is like I am not interested in the everyday drama of life, or of the comedy of life, or something like that, or even just filmmaking in general. It's like, oh no, you're a martial arts jock, and that's what you want to do with all your time. So I think I've always been a little bit, whenever I've told people about my writing, or told people about the different sides of me, they're always usually surprised about that. They're just like, oh, I just thought you were an action guy.
Well, what's the old Greek philosophy? A society that celebrates or separates its athletes from its intellectuals has its thinking done by the weak, and its fighting done by its fools.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I very much believe in that aspect of of the philosophy back then, was the balanced man. And I was actually in a fraternity in college, Sigma Phi Epsilon, and the whole idea was the balanced man. That's what attracted me at the first place, was your mind is the greatest gift, and your body is the vessel for your mind. So you need to be balanced between your physical body and your mental health, and that makes you a complete person.
Peter, let's take a step back into the filmmaking aspect. How do you come into production and become a part of Simplicity Pictures? And how did the name of Simplicity Pictures come about?
Sure. Yeah, I started the company back in 2016. I use it as the production company idea for me is that I wanted to make my own projects, obviously, and I didn't want to just say like Peter Jang Incorporated, and the idea for me came from that I believe that the world is a very simple place. It can be very complex, and it's actually something that I came up with as like kind of like the motto for my company was that when you're very young, you're naive because you think the world is a simple place. And then when you get older, you become smart because you realize how complicated the world is. But then when you get older, you become wise because then you realize how simple the world really is. And that's where all this came from, is that when we really pare back all the different aspects of life that we believe are complicated, it really comes down to, people want to belong, they want to have some kind of sense of purpose, and they want to live a happy life with their family, with their friends and family. I mean, that's and the human connections, that they foster. I mean, and that's really the most simple thing of everything, right? So my stories a lot of times are pretty complicated, but they always that them and most of your great stories ever told always boil down to very simple themes of good triumphing over evil. Happiness is the ultimate goal, and should be the ultimate goal in life, and for you and the people around you. I mean, these are very simple concepts, and really, my company, I want to make films that reflect that and help people incorporate that in their own life.
And what is something that you do to help simplify things when you start overthinking and overcomplicating situations?
This is actually a scientifically proven way to solve problems for yourself mentally, because the way I kind of look at it, and what they've kind of realized, is that your brain is very much like a computer, right? You have your desktop, which is your consciousness. That's what you manipulate from day to day. But then you have your subconscious, which is completely rational and completely logical, and that's what runs your heart, runs your breathing. You don't have to think about beating your heart. You have to think about breathing for the most part, or turning on your taste buds or anything like that. They just happen. These are automatic systems because they're in your subconscious. So a lot of times what I'll try to do is, if I have a problem or something that I'm trying to figure out, I'll concentrate it, I'll research, and I'll think about it very hard and very focused for a while, and then I'll completely do something else. I'll work on another project, I'll go work out, I'll go I'll spend some time with my family or something like that, completely take my mind off of it. And then, what you'll find when people do that, what you find is a couple of hours later, maybe a day later, maybe a week later, you have this epiphany come up. It's like, oh, I had this great idea how to solve my problem. But really, your subconscious has been working through it the whole time. But the completely logical, rational side of you has been working on it the whole time, versus your desktop where you're doing other things. You're all that is just gathering information and then sending it back to the subconscious to input, and say, maybe this works, maybe this works, maybe this works. And then all of a sudden it comes back to your forefront. Oh, I had this great idea. So, what you said, being able to, if I find myself perplexed or frustrated about something, I'll concentrate it on a while. I'll really try to think about every aspect of it and try to change my perspective and think about it. But then I'll do something completely else and just forget about it for a while. And maybe I'll check back, come back. And what I always find, and what has been literally scientifically proven by neuroscientists, is that your subconscious will come up with a solution and then present it to you, which will become as an epiphany, but really it's not an epiphany. It's just something you've been working on this whole time.
Peter, you keep mentioning family, and I can tell that you're big on family. And your mom, you mentioned your mom earlier, and the PTSD that she went through, and that it finally dawned on you what it was as you became an adult. How has her reaction been to your work, and seeing you evolve from her little boy to a college man and becoming an economist to now having his own business and being a creative person?
I mean, she's my mother has always been one of those people that, one of those mothers that's always been very, I don't know, supportive of, what I do. She just wants me to be happy, and luckily, I found this thing that has made me ultimately happy. I don't have to think about it. I just wake up and do it because I love it so much. And I think that she has really appreciated that. And she really has been proud of the work that I did, especially when it came to this flash short film Mask, because it is something that she still deals with. And I mean, she wasn't a combat veteran, but she did have PTSD from the military. And I feel like, and we've had talks about this, that she knows that I understand her better, and also I think she appreciates that I evangelize the need for stronger mental health um, support in America, just because she is in a lot of what has been a lot of ways a product of the lack of support that people need. And PTSD doesn't just come from war. It doesn't just come from military. It comes from any kind of trauma that you experience in your life. So I think that you know the more that we can talk about these things, and the more that we can see them out there, the more it's going to help others. And I think that she appreciates that she appreciates that I've been kind of putting my money where my mouth is, and actually doing these things.
Peter, I tend to ask the same question of other independent filmmakers, so I have to put it to you as well. You got a big investor behind you, and they're putting up $50 million. What is the dream $50 million project that you want to put together as an independent filmmaker?
50 million?
Yeah.
Well, actually, my current dream right now is just something that I'm going to be making myself next year. It's a feature film, my first feature film, called Simulation. And when it costs $50 million, but that's my current dream to do it. It's about a man in the near future who is practicing for a date with his dream girl by running simulations that are indistinguishable from reality. But in the process, he pushes the limits of his mind and morality, right? And I see it as kind of like my idea of where the world is going right now, with the virtual reality and the metaverse, kind of like, which is the surface level what it's about, but then also deeper into it, it's like the psychological effects of social media and just technology in general. Like, the more realistic these things become, how does it affect us as people, and how is it going to fit into our lives day to day? But my fifth, if something that's more, it actually will cost more than $50 million. But I do have a project that I've been developing since I was in college, before I even thought I was going to be in the film industry, about a near future where we stream the internet live into our brains. So it basically ends relative intelligence. So the idea is that, like, say me and you are talking, you ask me a question. I don't have to think about the answer; it just pops up into my head because it's information streaming. But the idea is that, okay, well, if in this kind of world, which we kind of have now, because you just need to look it up in your phone now, right? Let's say it's going straight in your brain, then how does that make it so that, does that change the way that we interact with each other? Because we're no longer learning from each other anymore. Are we even asking questions anymore? So, and this kind of concept, it's a very epic scale project, but it's something that I've been working on for a very long time. And I think that once I actually do make it, I think it's going to really change the way that people think about the world.
That would sound like a phenomenal limited series.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of why I'm saying, it's like, I don't think $50 million will do it. but I've been developing it for a long time, and I'm excited to progress my career further down the line, so that I can make it a reality one day.
And I do have to ask this, because I teased it at the very beginning. I am extremely jealous. The hair. What's the regimen, man?
Well, you know what? I just use whatever my girlfriend puts in the shower. She's like, use this bottle, then this bottle, then this bottle. I'm like, all right, got it.
In that order.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's nothing crazy. It's just, a conditioner, a shampoo, and then conditioner. She has a lot of other stuff that I don't use, but it's just, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with mostly just, keeping it clean and straight. As long as you brush it and you use the right kind of conditioner that keeps it hydrated, you know, at least for me, maybe I just got lucky. This is my first time having long hair, to be honest. All the way up until about 2 years ago, I had short hair my whole life.
I used to have hair and I used to have it long, but it was very wavy, so it always get
Okay.
big.
Yeah. Well, I have a little bit of a wave, but not much.
Peter, listen, man, it's been a great pleasure chatting with you today. Where can we find you and Simplicity Pictures on social media if we want to connect? And if people might have some ideas that they're willing to pitch?
Sure. My personal Instagram is at Peter Jang Official. On Facebook, you can find me, Peter Jang. Simplicity Pictures has a page on Facebook. It also has Instagram, Simplicity Pictures Inc. And also, you can go to my website, simplicity.pictures, and there's no .com at the end. It's just www.simplicity.pictures. And there is a contact me at the end. I actually need to update my website, but it has my older projects on there, and it will be having my newer projects on there as well.
Awesome. Peter Jang, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate your time.